Now, in December, I spoke to Sir Charles Walker, Conservative MP for Broxbourne, about plans drawn up to support MPs once they leave politics. With a high turnover of seats expected in the next general election, MPs will get taxpayer-funded help to get them to find work. He told me what MPs will be getting.
Basically, outplacement support, so advice with CVs, how to conduct, hopefully, a successful interview, how to better market themselves, how to make use of technologies to do that. So hopefully we can more quickly transition members of parliament who lose their seats into other employment.
Now, there were loads of MPs standing down at the next election. They've already announced they're going. Obviously, even more might lose their seats. We've been asking them about their post-Parliament plans in our series, The Exit Interviews. Here's a short selection of some of the aspiration MPs have on the way out.
My aim really would be to try and work in agri-food or agri-tech. I've got 9 years' experience in that sector.
Before I came into Parliament, I ran a consultancy business. I had a number of non-executive directorships. I may look at doing some of these things again.
I also chair a university, so I put my energy into that. I chair a theatre. I'm a visiting professor at King's College, so I want to do some more writing. That I'll be able to do that. And I'm hoping to chair a charity in Barking to keep my links with Barking.
What I've realised that I really do enjoy is I love creating and I love writing and I love communicating. So I'm kind of just looking for what opportunities present themselves.
That was the former Cabinet Minister George Eustace, former SNP leader in Westminster Ian Blackford, former Minister Dame Margaret Hodge, and Mhairi Black from the SNP. And the Exit Interviews returns again on Monday. So we're thinking, would you hire a former MP? We got YouGov, in fact, to poll this question for us. Imagine you were recruiting for a job that was not related to politics and you received an application from a former Member of Parliament. Do you think their former job would make you more or less likely to hire them? Only 5% said it would make them more likely. 24% said they were less likely to hire someone if they'd previously been an MP. So what can we do to help them get hired? Well, who better to ask than Nick Hewer, who used to advise Lord Sugar on hiring and firing on The Apprentice. Hi, Nick.
Good morning to you.
Great to have you with us. We've also got Martin Armstrong, the founder of Armstrong International, who works with former MPs, ministers, even former prime ministers on transitioning to their post-politics career. Hello, Martin.
Morning. How are you doing?
I'm very good. So, Nick, I suppose the first question, would you hire a former politician?
Well, it depends. It depends what they were doing before they were elected. And in the old days, of course, everybody had a job, and a lot of lawyers knocking about in the Commons. They do a bit of law in the morning and pop into the Commons in the afternoon. Now, they had something to fall back on. The problem these days is the politicians, in the main in their sort of 40s and early 50s, came straight out of university with a very neat little PPE, and they went plunged straight into a researcher's job, and before you knew what was going on, they were a SPAD, and then they became an MP. And frankly, they know absolutely nothing about the outside world. And I wouldn't give any of those a job because they have no experience in hiring people, firing people, winning business, what to do when you're losing business. Do you take a drop in your salary in order to maintain your workforce? All of those issues that people like you and I understand fully, they're completely at sea. They can chatter on and avoid answering the question until the towns come home. But I wouldn't employ them because I think they would be lost lambs in the workplace.
So, Martin, as an employer, Nick wouldn't necessarily sign them up. So what's your advice to MPs when they're looking for work outside politics?
Yeah, well, first of all, I completely disagree with everything Nick said. So just let's start there. So, these are, one of the things, whenever I'm in the early days when I started working with politicians, I always expected to meet somebody who was educationally subnormal because they were so lampooned in the public media. And when I met them, I discovered these are intelligent people. These are talented people. And one of the things I've found is that a lot of politicians have gone on to have fantastic post-political careers because they bring something that a lot of people aren't good at. So they understand geopolitics in many cases. They're very good at advocacy. They understand regulation. But the thing that they really understand is they understand social impact, because that's something that they have to deal with every day as a politician. They understand the impact of the behavior of the chief executive and the policies that they make in the company, that the impact that those policies have on the wider public at large. So, when I look at somebody like John Kingman at Legal & General or Shriti Vadera, these are people who've done a really fantastic job in these organizations in the post-political world. So I disagree with that. But I did speak to Amber Rudd actually before I got on this call, and I said, what was your strategy when you left? And she said she spoke to Nick Clegg, and she said that Nick said there are 5 things you had to do. The first thing you had to do was you had to pick your sector, one sector that you understood, that you had experience of, and that people found you credible in. The second thing you had to do was to define your narrative and to basically be very clear about what you have to bring to that sector. The third thing you have to do is mingle with the community, which means going to conferences. And one thing Amber said was you have to be very humble, because it's one thing driving around in a ministerial car. If you're in a conference, a healthcare conference in Birmingham, you just have to be one of the people, and you have to arrive with humility. And she said that 95% of the people that you meet will be of no use to you whatsoever, but you will meet one person who will show you an opportunity that's extremely valuable and useful. And I think politicians in the main, because they're so badly lampooned, when you do a YouGov poll, of course it's going to say that they shouldn't be employed. But when you talk to chief executives of what they need, very often they need people who understand a world which is becoming more dislocated, more complex, and they can find politicians very, very useful for that. There is one caveat that I would say, okay, and this is the caveat: Brexit. If you're a politician who is involved in Brexit, it's tougher, because most of the chief executives of multinational companies want a global community that doesn't have any boundaries. And, if you've been involved in creating those boundaries, you're going to find it tougher. So that's my 2 cents on the subject.
Yeah. Are you persuaded by any of that, Nick? Are you willing to change your mind?
I was a very experienced man talking there, certainly, and I bow to his superior wisdom. And maybe I'm one of those who sense that our political class at the moment is so third-rate and so awful, and the pickle we're in is not down to us. Basically, it's down to bad government. So I've listened carefully, and I accept that. What your contributor says, and I bow to his superior.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much.
There we are.
However, no, I'm a fair man. The only, I suppose, I used to be not in the lobbying business, but in the sort of communication side of things. And where they would be very useful, of course, is in lobbying, straightforward, honest lobbying. And I'm sure that they've been subjected
Plenty of them will be doing that.
I'm sure they'd be very good at delivering it. And I'm not suggesting for a moment, and here I agree full-heartedly with the previous speaker, and that is that there are very many fine people, decent, honest people, and their public perception is so rotten, actually, that they are lampooned. However, I worry that they have the ability and the understanding down to earth sorts of business that we're talking. Not everybody's going to go in at board level.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? For every Dominic Raab or whatever, going from the cabinet now, there are loads of people, backbench MPs. Some of them will lose their seats, and they'll have to go and find something else to do. Really good to speak to you, Nick Hewer there, former advisor, of course, to Lord Sugar on The Apprentice, and Martin Armstrong from Armstrong International. Thanks very much for joining us this lunchtime here at Times Radio.